call to call this to order in open session. Laura, could you take the roll call?
Sure. Counselor Elkins?
Present, and Counselor Foster just texted that she's coming.
Okay. So noted. Counselor Gore?
Here.
Counselor Jarrett?
Here.
Counselor Labarge?
Here.
Counselor Maori?
Here.
Counselor Moulton?
Here.
Counselor Nash?
Here.
And Counselor Perry?
Here.
Council President, you have a quorum.
Okay. And for the moment, we are being audio and video recorded. I think what we'll do is we'll wait. We'll give Counselor Foster one more second, because can we admit her once? Here she is.
There she is. Great.
Okay. Okay, now we are going to take a vote to enter into executive session. The mayor requests that City Council vote to enter executive session in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with regard to collective bargaining with all bargaining units, a public discussion of which may have a detrimental effect on the city's bargaining position. Laura, could we have a roll call to enter into executive session?
I think we need a motion.
You need a
and
motion.
second.
Oh, yeah.
I'll make
Can I get a motion? Thank you.
Second.
Okay, so the motion was made by
Counselor Labarge?
Councilor Labarge, seconded by Councilor Moulton. Okay,
Okay. All right. Counselor Elkins?
Here. Yes.
Counselor Foster?
Yes.
Counselor Gore?
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett?
Yes.
Counselor Labarge?
Yes.
Counselor Maori?
Yep. Here.
Counselor
Yes.
Moulton?
Yes.
Counselor Nash?
here.
And Counselor Perry?
Yes.
Okay. We have officially voted to go into executive session. I am to announce that whether or not we're going to reconvene at the conclusion of executive session.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Mr. President, may I ask you whether you declare that public discussion of collective bargaining strategy in public may have a detrimental effect on the city's bargaining position? Is that your declaration?
Yes, that is my, I thought I already read that part around the vote, but go ahead. Yeah, I'll make that declaration again, that public discussion of collective bargaining strategy in public may have a detrimental effect on the city's bargaining position. Thank you.
Just to be clear, you stated the reason for the executive session. Now you have to declare that as the president of the council, that is in fact your position, that it may have a detrimental effect on our bargaining position. So now we've dotted that I, and the question now is whether you'll be returning to open session.
Yes, and what is the procedure on that? I mean, we are reconvening for city council at 7 o'clock.
At 7 o'clock, or as soon thereafter as this portion of the meeting concludes. So while you technically have posted it as a separate meeting, the truth is you will be reconvening not earlier than 7 o'clock for the city council, the regular city council meeting.
So I need to repeat that?
No, I don't think so,
Okay.
unless I've misstated it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Accurate records of the executive session vote shall be maintained pursuant to section 23. All right, so I have completed Attorney Seawald's script. We're going to go into executive session, and at this point, we ask everybody to leave the room who is not part of council or the mayor's team or our bargaining team. Welcome to the March 31st City Council meeting. I am Jim Nash. I am the City Council President, and I will be presiding this evening. I want everybody to know this meeting and all participating on Zoom will be audio and video recorded. I now call the council to order. Laura, will you please take the roll call?
Sure. Counselor Elkins,
Yeah, present.
Counselor Foster,
I'm here.
Counselor Gore,
Here.
Counselor Jarrett,
Here.
Counselor Labarge,
Here.
Counselor Maori,
Here.
Counselor Moulton,
Here.
Counselor Nash,
Here.
and Counselor Perry.
Here and present.
Council President, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Laura. Now that we are convened, we will take public comment. If you wish to make a public comment, please use the raise hand feature. The raise hand feature is in the bottom menu bar under reactions. If you're calling by phone, you can raise your hand by hitting *9. If you're having trouble raising your hand, you may use the chat feature to send a message to me. To ensure equal access, and because of the open meeting law, technical problems such as not being able to raise your hand are the only thing that the chat function is used for, and the chat function will only be available during public comment. We cannot accept comment over chat, private chat, or chat only visible on Zoom during a public meeting is antithetical to an open public process, in violation of the council rules for public participation, and violates the spirit and potentially the law of open meeting law. If you want to submit a written public comment, please email it to citycouncil@northamptonma.gov, and it will be sent to all councilors and will be part of the public record. I will unmute each raised hand in the order raised to make a comment. Before you begin, please state your name and your city or town for the public record. To ensure everyone has an equal opportunity to speak, the council limits comments to 2 minutes. You are in no way obligated to use the full 2 minutes, but if you do, after 2 minutes, I will ask you to please finish your sentence. Tonight, we also will be trying out a new timer, which will appear in Zoom to help track the 2 minutes. According to council rules, we do not respond during public comment, as it is your time to speak. So while your comments should be directed to us, you will understand when we do not respond. Our rules also state the councilors and members of the public shall conduct themselves with civility and respect at all times. Your protected speech is a constitutional right and one that we ask that you wield with consideration and respect for all, and with recognition that the public space that grants you that freedom is shared equally by everyone. Also, according to open meeting law, if someone is disrupting a meeting, they may be removed. You may speak on any topic. It doesn't need to be an item on the agenda. I ask that all but the council turn off your video until called upon. Only the person recognized has the floor, and all comments are to be directed to the council. One further note, this meeting can be watched on channel 15 or by streaming on Northampton Open Media's YouTube and other platforms. Okay, so we are now to public comment, and I see Nan, and we're asking Nan to unmute. Let's see if we...
Nancy Smith, Chapel Street. Even if all our $25,000 per year in animal control expenses were for boarding, it would take 40 years just to break even on $1 million kennel. This is a bad investment. 80 to 90% of the dogs are now chipped and brought directly home or spend a few hours in a well-lit room at our police station. If we spend $1 million on a kennel, these known dogs waiting for pickup will no longer be placed in a safe 24/7 police station. They will be placed in a windowless dog prison whose build is known to cause anxiety and barking in dogs. Only certified ACOs are allowed in. Even the police can't get in. If the ACO goes off duty, your dog could be in there for as many as 16 hours. As a former dog owner, I would not want my Yorkie stuck in there all night with an aggressive dog barking at 92 dB. That's smoke alarm level. If a dog is in there for just an hour, the caged area requires mandated cleaning done by a state-trained crew while an ACO is present. Our pets will be less safe and our costs will skyrocket if we don't stop this now. The other 10 to 20% of dogs are now taken to Amherst's new empty kennel for up to 10 days each, where they are fed and cared for by Amherst ACOs. Our ACOs now spend 3 hours per stray dog on drop-offs and pickups to Amherst. If we build our own duplicate kennel, ACOs will spend far more hours per day caring for those animals for 100 to 200 plus days per year, including weekends and holidays. Costs will go through the roof with no benefit. Placing this facility in a residential neighborhood next to a trail with heavy human and dog foot traffic will further agitate the dogs inside, increasing barking both inside and outside the kennel. These strays would be far better off in Amherst kennel, which is responsibly placed far from homes and foot traffic. I am asking the mayor to please stop this irresponsible plan now. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Next up is Chris.
So before you
Hello,
start,
Chris, you have the floor.
before you start the timer, I have my neighbor Pat here also, so I hope that we can do myself and then her.
Sure, we can do that. Chris, identify yourself, your
Yes.
name and where you
Yeah.
are, and you'll have 2 minutes, and then you can hand the Zoom over to your friend there.
Yeah, it's Pat Menard. Hello, my name is Christine Clark. I live Pines Edge, Northampton. I've lived here 6 years. I've enjoyed this beautiful, serene gem of Fitzgerald Lake Conservation Land being my neighbor. 53 days ago, we had a letter jammed in 8 of our doors, inviting us to come to a meeting to help design a dog kennel. At that moment, we made copies and shared it with all of the abutting houses because this proposal affects the entire neighborhood. If I can remind you, 44 residents in this area abutting Fitzgerald Lake Conservation Land voted no out of 55 homes. That petition has never been acknowledged, and you have proceeded to ignore your constituents and move forward with this outrageous proposal. Maybe I'm wrong, but I thought we voted people in to the political arena to represent, acknowledge, and honor the taxpayers. It feels like you have an agenda and you're moving forward with it, ignoring this neighborhood and its constituents. We do not want a dog kennel in our backyard. This dog kennel needs to be in a non-residential area where the barking will not be a constant and nuisance to anyone. There is no way a dog kennel will meet daily decibel limits of 70. A dog barks 83 to 112 decibels and travels a mile. We live 250 feet from this area. I think it's like opening up a can of worms. There is no way with any sound mediation you're going to prevent this barking from affecting us here. And in turn, we're going to complain about the noise, and the problem will continue. That headache won't be a headache if you put this kennel in an area where there are no homes and no people to affect. There has to be another location for this dog park, this dog kennel. I have heard the land by the prison was offered, any place besides our backyards. Please find an alternative that represents the desires and the needs of your constituents. This land you are purchasing deserves to be just that, land for the people. Thank you. And here's
Thank you.
Pat.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay, should I start?
Welcome,
Patricia.
Pat.
Okay, hi. Pat Maynard, 18 Pines Edge Drive. I've been here about 25 years in this, again, nice, quiet surroundings. And I continue to advocate for using the 196 Cook Ave property for conservation purposes rather than an animal control facility. In Amherst, the animal control facility has no homes in sight. In Sturbridge, the animal control has no homes in sight. And yet in Sturbridge, in some homes high on a hill behind a wooded area, at least a half a mile away, barking can be heard, especially at night when the dogs are left alone. Also, while sitting in my home with the windows closed, I heard barking coming from the trail entrance. Combining barking from the trail with barking from the kennel could become unbearable. This cannot be good for maintaining the value of my home. Besides the concern over the barking, there is concern of runoff containing feces, urine, and chemicals seeping into the conservation area in the wetlands. This could be harmful to wildlife that frequent the area for food and water and create a health hazard for those using the trail and for the nearby residents. In addition, ticks are prevalent in the area, exposing dogs in your care to that hazard. I still find it mystifying how elected officials can think a kennel with an exorbitant price tag placed in a residential neighborhood is appropriate for the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Next up is Tracy Culver. Welcome, Tracy.
Hi. I'm talking about the animal control facility yet again. And I asked for projected costs at an earlier meeting, and I'm asking again, since I haven't seen any information. How much of an increase in the animal control budget will this facility require on an annual basis? Where is the income going to come from to keep it running? Will you charge dog owners? Will annual costs of this facility be totally subsidized by tax dollars? If so, taxpayers really need to see dollars and cents, and then we should be able to vote yes or no. How can you go ahead with this project if you don't know its effect on our budget? That isn't fair to the taxpayers. If I contract to build a house, I have to know how much it will cost to build and how much to maintain. Why is this different? You have no numbers for animals needing to be controlled annually, and you have no annual numbers in dollars and cents for maintenance. What's going on here? Why are you hell-bent on building this thing? It strikes me as being very odd. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Next up is John Sniffen.
Hi there, thanks. I just want to put my 2 cents in about the stormwater fee. Since this fee was instituted a few years ago, I've been fairly challenged to make sense of the stormwater fee structure. Obviously, the city has to find a way to pay for this, and raising taxes has its limits. My understanding is that the range of fees is based on the amount of impervious land on one's property, presuming that that relates to the potential usage of the stormwater system. But while I believe our property was assessed at the highest fee, our property doesn't even seem to utilize the stormwater system at all. All of the water on our property flows back onto our land, and none of it runs onto the road. So by at least my understanding, we probably shouldn't be charged a fee at all. And I'm not suggesting I shouldn't pay, our fair share, but it seems like the current structure is not the best. And it seems like I would wonder if it should be reconsidered. And my understanding is that there's maybe a committee being discussed to revisit this, which I would certainly support. And, certainly some kind of mechanism for appeals so that, the fees are actually, if it is as I understand it, fairly applied. So anyway, thanks for your time.
Thank you, John. Next up is Claudia Lefko. Welcome, Claudia.
Hi, thanks. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Claudia Lefko, 40 Valley Street. I'm here to invite the councilors and the mayor, maybe especially the mayor, to come to a meeting on Saturday in our neighborhood. It's at 99 William Street, which is the abutting property to 107 William Street, which is a property being developed into condominiums, the house being destroyed and so forth. And it's a bit of a problem in our neighborhood. I'm hoping you will come to this meeting. It's 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock on Saturday. Everybody has got a postcard announcement of this, all the city councilors. But one of the issues that comes up over and over again when you tune into city council meetings is the lack of responsiveness between the city and the residents. So you've got the dog park, you've got the dog pound people, you have the police cam people, you have the police surveillance cameras, you have the zoning issues. People feel there's a disconnect between what what the city is doing and what the residents want to be done. So this is an opportunity for you to come to our neighborhood, see for yourself what's on the ground here. Talk to residents about what their issues are. This back and forth in the Zoom meetings does not begin a conversation. It's simply our opportunity to state very concisely one issue. But we're offering you an opportunity to actually come and see on the ground what our problem is with the zoning in Northampton. The group is called Houses, Gardens, and Trees. We're a citizens movement challenging the current zoning and infill policies in Northampton. Please come. It's an opportunity for you to see the disconnect between sustainable Northampton, between what's on paper and what's on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. All right, next up is Jeff Friedman.
Great.
Welcome, Jeff.
Great, thanks so much. Just a quick editorial comment that I found it very difficult to find the Zoom link on the site. I guess this is part of my 2 minutes, but just in terms of transparency, I think that Northampton could do a better job of making it really easy to find the link. I'm fairly well educated. It took me 5 minutes. Okay, I write it. So this is a letter that I wrote to the Gazette that was published this Monday. I write in response to the March 5th article, Northampton moves ahead with animal pound over neighborhood opposition, about the city council's vote approving the purchase of the former Moose Lodge building and lot. While I appreciate, and I really do, the hard work that you all are elected officials and city employees devote to helping make Northampton a great place to live, I believe the mayor and you, city council, did not make a compelling case for citing the facility there. Animals should be sheltered in a location that isolates them from unnecessary interaction with people and their pets. They can hear and smell other animals and people and become agitated, resulting in lots of barking and excited behavior. The Moose Lodge site is a vital access point to the Fitzgerald Lake Conservation Area, a treasured Northampton wildlife corridor. It is visited daily by hundreds of people, as well as dozens and dozens of dogs. An animal shelter should be located as far as possible, reasonably, from residences to minimize its impact on the community. The proposed site abuts the neighborhoods of Pines Edge, Emily Lane, Cook Avenue, and the Lathrop community. 44 of 55 households signed a citizen-initiated petition opposing this site. The mayor and city officials shared anecdotal evidence suggesting that current procedures for handling stray, homeless, and surrendered animals are inconvenient for the animal control staff and haphazard, and that reliance on using Amherst Town Kennel is costly. However, no concrete, complete data was provided, demonstrating a need for Northampton to own and run its own facility. I'm out of time. I suggest find a different place. It's not a suitable place. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Jeff. Next up is Mac Everett. Welcome, Mac.
Thank you. I would like to sing you a song that's kind of a follow-up to Claudia's invitation to come to William Street. It's not that easy losing green, having to watch a home be destroyed, when I think it could be nicer being fixed and updated, or something more sustainable like that. It's not easy losing green. Seems you blend in with so many other sad parking lots. Birds and bees will pass you over, 'cause their habitat's gone. There's nothing for them to help them survive. Green's the color of backyards, and green can heal body and soul, and green can be havens for children, local food for their families, flowers to bring joy. Sorry about that. When green is all there is to be, it could make you wonder why infill Street this weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, Mac. Next up is Adrian. Are you there? Let me see. Did we get you unmuted? You're
Trying to
there.
unmute. All right.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd just like to piggyback on the issue with the dog kennel and its placement. As a resident of Pines Edge, I remain resistant and opposed to the building of a kennel at this site. If indeed at the Moose Lodge site, which I feel would be much better put to use as an extension of conservation area, since it's already a lovely Fitzgerald Lake entrance and so on and so forth. The problems are numerous in terms of the after effects of building a kennel in that location. If the city does indeed feel that Northampton needs its own independent dog pound, I really disagree with the notion of kennel. It really is a dog pound. And if we do need one, then it would be much more suitable to place it elsewhere. There have been several letters to the editor of the Gazette, and one today from a resident who suggested that it clean up the site near the DPW for the dog, quote unquote, I'm quoting, unquoting, kennel. There have been numerous sites that would be far more suitable, I feel, in terms of meeting this need for the animal control facility. So I do hope that, you know, we will be heard and that the reasonable suggestions for alternative sites in a non-residential neighborhood would be strongly considered. Thank you.
Thank you.
I flubbed a couple of things, but
I think somebody has, can we mute Mac? I could probably hear him from across the street too. All right, any other folks? I don't see any other hands here. I'll just look through the list. Okay, no further hands. We've completed public comment. All right, now we are on to public hearings. First, we have two announcements. Announcement of a public
Councilor
hearing.
Nash?
Yes.
Councilor Nash, I'm sorry to interrupt. I saw a late breaking hand, a video that
Oh,
had come
another
on
neighbor.
right as we were ending.
Here, let's
Looks like Len.
welcome Lynn and John. Let's see if we can get you unmuted. Hello?
Hey, how's that? Can you hear me?
We can hear you now, Lynn.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you.
Welcome.
So my name is Lynn Yanis. I live at 30 Valley Street. I'd like to echo some of the remarks that were made earlier, I think by my neighbor Claudia, who talked about a disconnect with neighbors, with the neighborhood. So there's this thing happening at 107 William Street, and lots and lots and lots of neighbors are really unhappy with it. We have there a beautiful, huge old tree that is doing a wonderful job with stormwater. And that's pretty much the best thing in our neighborhood. Well, except for the people. We have no sidewalks. We have no access to the bike path. The infrastructure is terrible, terrible in this neighborhood. I mean, Jim, have you walked down William Street recently? You cannot walk two abreast on the sidewalk. And I'm looking at the city's plan for sustainable Northampton that specifies things like, we're not going to do infill unless there's really good infrastructure. We're going to have dense housing where there's access to alternative transportation. Well, here we've got an infill project and terrible infrastructure. we have increased density and zero access to alternative transportation. So I'm wondering if maybe the mayor or the city council just really doesn't know what things look like in our neighborhood. And I would really like to echo the invitation to stop by 99 Williams in the afternoon of Saturday. It's supposed to be a beautiful sunny day. Thank you.
Thanks, Lynn. Okay. Any other hands? Okay. I see Mac applauding. Okay. All right. That doesn't count. All right. No more hands for public comment. We are now on to public hearings. First, an announcement of a public hearing on item 22.022, a national grid pole petition for one slightly owned pole on Ryan Road. Let's see, per MGL 166, section 22, the Northampton City Council will hold a public hearing on Thursday, April 14th, 2022 at 7 p.m. on National Grid's petition to install one slightly owned pole on Ryan Road. Instructions for accessing the hearing may be found on the April 14th City Council agenda to be posted on the city's website, www.northamptonma.gov, no later than 48 hours prior to the meeting. The City Council will hear all persons who wish to be heard thereon. Okay, that's announcement number one. Number two, announcement of a public hearing to consider altering the layout of portions of Parsons Street, Union Street, Pomeroy Terrace, Hawley Street, and Holyoke Street. Pursuant of Mass General Law, Chapter 82, Section 21, either the Northampton City Council or, what am I missing here? Or the City Council Committee on Finance, we will be resolving this a little later in our meeting, will be subject to decision of the City Council at its regular March 31st meeting. Will hold a public hearing by remote participation on Thursday, April 14th, 2022 at 7:15 p.m. to consider altering the layout of Parsons Street, Union Street, Pomeroy Terrace, Hawley Street, and Holyoke Street, and discontinuing a small portion of Parsons Street. The City Council or the Finance Committee, to be determined, will hear any person interested or wishing to be heard thereon. Instructions for accessing the hearing may be found on the April 14th City Council agenda that'll be posted 48 hours before the meeting on the city website. And that brings us to item number 3 under public hearings. Public hearing to consider FY 2023 water and sewer rates. The Northampton City Council will hold a public hearing by remote participation on Thursday, March 31st, 2022 at 7 p.m. The City Council will consider the proposed FY 2023 water and sewer rates and hear all persons who wish to be heard thereon. Councilors, could I get a motion to open the public hearing?
Make a motion to open up the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Councilor Barge, seconded by Councilor Foster. Laura, a roll call to open the public hearing.
Councilor Gore,
Yes.
Councilor Jarrett,
Yes.
Councilor Labarge,
Yes.
Councilor Maori,
Yes.
Councilor Moulton,
Yes.
Councilor Nash,
Yes.
Councilor Perry,
Yes.
Councilor Elkins,
Yes.
and Councilor Foster.
Yes.
Okay, all right, the public hearing is open. And I'm just going to give a quick overview of what is before us. And I believe that Director LaScalia is here and the mayor is here as well. Order 22.062 to establish water and sewer rates for FY 2023. Be ordered that effective July 1st, 2022, per the 100 cubic foot rates for water and sewer for fiscal year 2023 will remain unchanged from fiscal year 2022. Rates will remain as follows. Water, customers with 1 inch meter or smaller, tier 1 consumption, 0 through 16 cubic centimeters per 100 cubic feet will be at 451. Tier 2 consumption for people, for residents at 16 CCFs per CC. Oh boy, I'm botching this one. So for 16 CCFs, the rate will be $6.09 per 100 cubic feet of water. Customers with meters larger than 1 inch, all consumption will be at $5.99 per CCF. Sewer is non-metered, and that will be at $7.86 per CCF based on 80% of metered water consumption. Metered sewer will be at $7.86 per CCF. Okay. And Donna is here and she can explain this a lot better than I can.
Can I just?
The mayor, yes, Mayor, go right ahead.
Good evening. Thank you, Council President. Good evening again, councilors. Yes, as we discussed at our last meeting and as was just read in the order, we're not recommending a change to rates this year because of economic uncertainty. And but we do need to have a really serious discussion very soon about how we are going to fund some of these upcoming projects that Director LaScalia has told you all about. And that need to be done. And we also need to talk about the potential impact of Coca-Cola leaving next June. So Director LaScalia is here and can answer, can also address questions, and can also speak to sort of our plan going forward in terms of how we're gonna start to have this conversation around rates, even though we are not recommending a change this year.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight to talk a little bit about our water and sewer utilities. So I'll start with water. And, you know, we have a very expansive system, over 160 miles of water lines, 2 transmission mains. Some, you know, we've talked a lot about this. Over time and in capital planning, we put forward a request for several $1 million for upgrades on the water side to our reservoirs, to our transmission mains, and to our water mains. And these are fairly big ticket expenditures that we must push ahead with, regardless of who the customers in the city are. And Main Street alone, the two water mains on Main Street were actually installed in the late 1800s and early 1900s. So they're well over 100 years old. And those will need to be replaced as part of the Main Street project. So these are large capital expenditures that must happen regardless of whether Coca-Cola is leaving or not. And then on the sewer side, we have over 110 miles of collection system. We have our wastewater treatment plant, remote pump stations, and as you may know, we are just finishing up a more than $10 million upgrade, the first phase of upgrades to our wastewater treatment plant, but phase 2 of the upgrades is following close behind, and we are looking at nearly $20 million in expenditures for phase 2 at the wastewater plant. And we will actually be back before you very shortly to seek authorization for that expenditure. So with that, I'm sorry about my dog in the background. So with that being said, what we have chosen to do this year is to hold where we are with rates, but we have engaged the engineering firm Ty and Bond to take a close look at consumption patterns within the city in terms of water usage, to look at our capital planning and the expenditures that are necessary, and then to work with us to make recommendations about how to best move forward, given that at this time next year, we will likely be looking at significant offsets to our revenue. Coca-Cola represents roughly a third of our revenue, and that's sort of a rough number, but a third of our revenue in both water and sewer. So we're looking at a little more than $6 million utility for sewer and about a $7 million utility for water. So a third of that revenue is quite significant, and we will need to have a good plan moving forward, or for about how we're going to move forward. So happy to take questions.
Councillor Labarge.
Yes, thank you, Donna LaScalia, for doing your presentation. I know I did talk to you as a counselor, and I also talked with Annie in the mayor's office of the calls that I've been getting from many, many people. Not just now because of this coming in. They're happy to hear that there's not an increase in the water and sewer rates. The problem is a lot of people are feeling that another committee needs to be formed, definitely. And that message I left to Annie, to the mayor, of looking at the stormwater fee and the tiers that we have in it. They feel that it is not fair. And I have to agree, because when I had a meeting with the mayor and Tony Patillo, who was our building inspector, he had retired within, we had a lengthy talk with the mayor. And he even said that he really thought about placing a meeting and he needed to look into it, but he also thought that probably we should do that. So anyways, I just want to say that I have great concerns as a counselor of what I'm hearing from people about having another committee formed again with the Department of Public Works, the mayor, and whoever is selected on it, of looking at how these tiers are being spread out, because they are not equal. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Yes, we have been having conversations around this, and it is something that we plan to look at sometime in the near future.
I thank you for that.
Any other questions related to the drinking water sewer? Councillor Jarrett.
Yeah, thank you, Director LaScalia. I know that one of the things that ARPA funds can be used for is water and sewer infrastructure. Is there any, is that something that we should be thinking about in terms of, I know that would be just a one-time use, but not, and it wouldn't address our ongoing budget shortfall.
So actually in the capital improvement plan that you adopted, there are ARPA funds that are already allocated to the wastewater treatment plant and to stormwater.
Yep.
So, so yes, so this is something I think we talked about on when we were taking the tour of the DPW. One of the challenges of ARPA funds are, and we're about to have an ARPA presentation, we can talk about it more too, is that they need to be allocated and spent in what is actually a pretty short time frame, which is very hard for these massive projects that Director LaScalia has been talking about. So we have prioritized ones that are at a place in terms of design and permitting that the work is ready to go, or is already underway, so that we can use ARPA funds for those, and know that we can allocate those funds by the time that they need to be allocated.
Councillor Maori.
Yeah, I really appreciate the maintaining the current rates. I think that's very thoughtful, and I thank you for that. I just wanted to get back to, there was a public comment about exemptions, and I will say in Ward 5 and Ward 6 and 7, I'm sure Councilor Labarge hears this too. There are situations that, I really can't answer to about, people's land, that they say they're filtering the water or it's coming back. And I think it is for a sense of fairness, having like an exemption process, so it feels like a fee and not a tax, would go a long way to addressing some of the feelings that, that folks in our wards have, that it's unfair because they're not actually, the water isn't running off.
Thank you for that feedback. I appreciate it. Just to be clear, so this public hearing is on water and sewer rates, and is actually not on stormwater, but I do hear what you and Councilor Labarge were saying on stormwater.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. And this is a public hearing, so I will soon be opening the floor to the public. Councilors, any more questions? Okay, so we have heard from the proponents, I'm now going to open the floor. If there's anybody here who would like to raise their hand and speak to the water sewer rates, raise your hand. Oh, cool, Tracy. All right. Tracy.
Hi
Culver,
again.
You have the floor.
I just wanted to say thank you for not raising the water and sewer rates. These rates are difficult for people on fixed income and on Social Security. So it's important, if we want to keep our old folks around in Northampton, that we don't force them out by raising rates like this too high. But I have a feeling that you're giving us a year and then you're going to nail us big time for these huge projects that you're talking about. So I guess I'm just asking for some continued mercy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. Anybody else who would like to speak to the water rates, water sewer rates? Okay, proponents, opponents, any more people who want to speak? All right, councilors, any more questions? Okay, I will, if everybody's good, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Move to close.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Councilor Moulton and seconded by, I think, Councilor Perry. So, Laura, roll call, please.
Councilor
To close the
Jarrett,
public hearing.
Yes.
Councilor Labarge,
Yes.
Councilor Maori,
Yes.
Councilor Moulton,
Yes.
Councilor Nash,
Yes.
Councilor Perry,
Yes.
Councilor Elkins,
Yes.
Councilor Foster,
Yes.
and Councilor Gore.
Yes.
Okay. The public hearing has now been closed, and that item is currently under the consent agenda and is up for approval tonight. Next up is announcements from councilors and the mayor. And the mayor has a presentation here. I'd like to just ask if there's other announcements before we get to the presentation.
Yes.
Councilor Labarge.
Thank you.
And then Councilor Jarrett.
Yeah. I just want to thank the many, many people who have been calling me in regards to the invitation of the Rotary for our day of service here in the city of Northampton. We've also added on another street, which I was surprised to hear that one, but we're all set, which we are also going to be planting 13 trees on Greenleaf Drive. That is the Rotary and many volunteers who have come forth to help us with this. And it is, really has given a huge interest in our city in protecting the environment. So I have to say the Northampton Rotary Club is really working tirelessly with the city of Northampton, the Urban Forestry Commission, and the nonprofit tree of Northampton to help us work and make this successful. So I want to thank everybody who's contacted me, which I had them also be involved in contact with Barbara Devlin, who also is the chair. And it looks like we've got a lot of calls and a lot of people coming forth. So I want to thank everybody for that.
Thank you, Counselor.
You're welcome.
Counselor Jarrett.
Thank you. The Legislative Matters Committee will be meeting on Monday, April 11th at 5:30 p.m. and we will be continuing the public hearing on the form-based code for downtown Northampton and Florence Center. That hearing started on March 24th with the Planning Board, and we'll be continuing that conversation. So please come and ask your questions and give your input on this important zoning change. Thanks.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Foster.
I have two. The first is that Saturday morning, the Friends of Northampton Trails and Greenways are organizing a rail trail cleanup starting at 9 and going till 11. I'm not sure of all of the details. I'll be working with the Northampton Kiwanis Club, meeting at Veterans Field at 9 a.m. on Saturday morning and covering the section between Pleasant Street and Texas Road. Invite anybody who loves the trails to come on out and give a hand with cleanup. There'll be volunteers all along the trail. And then also the City Services Committee meeting on Monday. Just wanted to announce that Brian Foote, the Director of the Arts and Culture, he had intended to join us in March and had to reschedule. He'll be joining us on Monday, and that meeting's at 5 o'clock.
Thank you. Okay, Counselor Jarrett is back, and then Counselor Maori.
Just a quick thank you, Counselor Foster, for that. The information about the trail cleanup. If you go to fntrails.org, you can find more information, and because there are sites all over the city where folks will be meeting, and you can find information about how to sign up for that.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Maori.
Yes, just for any fans of the Finance Committee, our next meeting will be on Tuesday, the 5th at 5:30 virtually.
Okay. Any other announcements? I just have one, which is that at our next council meeting, we will get a presentation on ranked choice voting from Bob Boldris. Basically, we're going to get the recommendations that are going to be sent off to the State House. That Mr. Boldris has been very patient as we've moved him around to accommodate a bunch of different council schedules. And this seems the 14th seems to be the ideal one for him to present. So, all right, not seeing any more announcements. And I think the mayor is ready to give us
Councilor Labarge, I think, has an announcement.
Yeah.
Oh, Councilor Labarge.
No, I think I just heard Councilor Maori come out and say that we were having a finance committee on April 5th. Is that correct, Councilor Nash?
I think, is that what you said, Councilor Mayor?
Yes.
I can't do it.
Okay.
Okay, I can do the 6th.
Well, why don't we?
So we need to talk about that.
Okay, we can.
Yeah. Okay,
I recommend tomorrow morning that the chair and vice chair of finance get to make a phone call and make some recommendations to the other members of finance.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, anything else? All right, Mayor, you have an update. You're going to give us a PowerPoint.
I am going to give
I'm
you
going to get out my popcorn. Here we go.
All right. Let me share. Let me do it. Make sure I'm sharing the right place. And okay, can you all see that?
Yes.
Yes, I'm not seeing any nodding, but okay. And now I am going to. Now, can you all see it like a presentation?
It's on presenter view, Mayor. So
okay.
We see that plus.
We can see your notes.
Yeah.
Thank you for telling me that. Okay, hold on, let me end show and try this. How's that?
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Is that good? Okay.
Oh,
All
yeah.
right. So yes, good evening again. I'm happy to give an update on ARPA, and I wanted to make sure that I did so before April, since there's a council meeting scheduled next month that I can attend due to the scheduling change. So I wanted to make sure that I gave you all an update, and I will try and keep it as brief as possible because I know you've got some other weighty things on your agenda. So I'll just say I attended the Massachusetts Mayors Association meeting yesterday, and have been a part of many statewide meetings and meetings amongst mayors in the last 2 months. And I can tell you that the number one topic has been ARPA. All of my colleagues are working to figure this out. And while I had hoped we would be farther along on the cusp of April tomorrow, I'm seeing that actually we are ahead of many. So, but I'm very happy to give an update. And now I can't access my little thingies. There we go. Okay. So these next two slides, I'm not going to go over in a great deal of detail because you've seen them before on previous presentations. They are just giving some background on ARPA. This presentation will go on the ARPA page, webpage on the city's site. So if you want to kind of go over them some more, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on sort of the history and what ARPA is, but I think I think we have a general understanding of it. We received half of our funds last spring, and we'll get the second half this summer. And on December 16th, the City Council voted to accept the funds to be expended based on the Treasury's guidelines. And we'll talk about this a little bit more, and it was just sort of talked about a little bit before, but all funds must be committed by December 31st, 2024, and fully expended by December 31st, 2026. Oops. Okay, and this is just some more background information that you can go back and look at if you would like to. Why is that making that sound at me? There we go. So I do want to spend a little bit of time on Northampton's ARPA process. So our COVID-19 Economic Recovery Grants Administrator, Abby Stone, has done a really remarkable job navigating this evolving landscape while also administering our CARES and FEMA grants. She attends more webinars than any human should have to, and is constantly researching to ensure that every step we take in the ARPA process will be in compliance. She does this working very closely with Finance Director Nardi, who has worked on the lost revenue aspect of this and consulted with our outside auditor that the council hired, Scanlon and Associates, to be sure that we're in compliance on all those requirements. And then back in the fall, the mayor's office created and put out a survey in English and Spanish to get feedback from the community on what the community's priorities are. There is a lot of conversation and research that my office has been doing to understand how ARPA is being used in the Commonwealth. And that brings us to where we are right now, where we're going to be convening the ARPA Advisory Committee. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And I'll be able to update more on that next week and post the list of those folks. We just have one more person to hear from. I don't know if the council knows this, but the council president has 2 appointments on this committee of councilors, and those are Councilors Foster and Moulton. So that committee will begin their process very soon. And we will go more into that in the next slide. And then the mayor's office will continue to administer the funds and ensure that we meet all reporting requirements. So here is looking at this on a timeline. And you see here where we are in 2022. And the committee will be meeting soon, and will start their public process with public meetings to hear more from community members on their priorities, as well as provide information for those that may want to apply for community recovery funds. And then, as we talked about before, all funds must be obligated by December 31st, 2024. And then the projects need to be wrapped up and all funds must be expended by December 31st, 2026. So here's a review of the 4 eligible categories for use of ARPA funds. You've seen this slide many times, so we'll just go quickly. Recovering lost revenue from the pandemic, responding to negative economic impacts in the community and the public sector, providing additional payments to essential workers in critical sectors that bore risk, and infrastructure investments in water, sewer, stormwater, and broadband. And here we see Northampton's ARPA plan. You'll see this largest section is lost revenue, and we're going to go into this in quite a bit of depth. Under the ARPA final rule, local governments are able to appropriate a one-time $10 million in revenue loss funds, which is actually very close to our calculated amount of lost revenue from the pandemic, which was calculated at 9.1 million. All communities who have information available about their spending so far have elected to take ARPA funds for revenue loss. And I'll go into some of the reasons for that. We want to be sure that we account for lost revenue because our financial stability is what allowed us during the COVID health emergency to provide support to residents and actually the larger community, our larger geographic area with vaccine clinics, health inspections, masks, COVID testing, additional shelter services, and other important safety guidance. So we need to ensure that the city is able to provide such services in the ongoing health emergency and in future emergencies. And importantly, it's been the recommendation across the board to take the $10 million amount because revenue loss funds are by far the most inclusive category and allow for the greatest flexibility in use. The council will remember from the last meeting that a use of lost revenue funds that the council approved was for about $1.1 million for the fire rescue ladder truck that had been an unexpected expense. By using lost revenue, we did not need to borrow for that truck and will save about $149,000 by not borrowing. We'll talk a little bit more about benefits of lost revenue. I also want to say at this meeting that I was at yesterday for the Massachusetts Mayors Association, the possibility of clawbacks was raised, which was alarming to all in the room. Earlier this month, the House Republicans tried to build into their spending bill a clawback for some of the second rounds of ARPA payments, but then it was pulled when it was clear it wouldn't pass. But we, as I'm sure you all know, we're at a very tenuous moment with congressional midterms coming this fall, and there is concern that there could be a movement by a shifted House to claw back not yet used ARPA funds. So this is an additional reason why we want to be careful to secure funds by lost revenue. So the revenue loss category opens up possibilities to use funds for projects that would not otherwise be eligible for ARPA funding, such as paving, infrastructure, and capital expenses. And the funds can still, of course, be used for ARPA eligible projects. This category preserves funds for use even after the ARPA program ends because it removes them from this 2-year timeline for appropriation. So they would go into free cash, and then we could then use them for capital projects in the future, and we wouldn't have to be held to that really tight timeline that's made it hard, in particular around some of these larger infrastructure projects. And then the council, since they would come through free cash, the council would then approve these expenditures through the appropriation process. So moving on to the next part of the pie, water, sewer, stormwater, and broadband. This is an important opportunity to catch up on infrastructure improvements and build resilience to weather events. And as we were just talking about, there's a lot of uncertainty with Coca-Cola leaving. This can help us prepare for those losses and help us move forward our identified interest in municipal broadband, which we know was voted overwhelmingly by the city. And as we just talked about briefly, we have already appropriated funds towards the wastewater treatment plant and stormwater in the capital improvement program that will be drawn from ARPA funds. And now we get on to community, what we're calling our community recovery and the community projects. So some, but not all communities are using a portion of their ARPA funds for nonprofit support or other community support. Our portion at over 18% seems to be higher than most communities right now, according to my conversations and our research. But I'll say that that's something that I'm actually really comfortable with, and even I would say that I'm really proud of. We know how hard the pandemic has been on the community, small businesses, the increase in those needing support, and increase in housing insecurity and houselessness. And we've also taken the approach that we want to engage the community in identifying their priorities for these funds and have asked them to share with us the personal impacts that they've felt. So as I said, we're about to enter the next phase of our community conversation around these recovery funds. So I'll be convening the ARPA Advisory Committee, and they will develop a process and criteria for evaluating project proposals. The committee will accept proposals from Northampton businesses and organizations for eligible projects which help the community. And the funds are to respond to immediate needs as identified by the community through the ARPA survey and the listening sessions. And recommendations will be based on proposals and projects deemed most beneficial for our city and residents through an equity lens. Let's see, which slide are we on? Again, these are some of the survey results from the survey in the fall. So we have at least one person left to impanel for the committee, and then I'll share the list. The community members that are being chosen were informed by the responses to the survey and have expertise in the stakeholder categories. But we have been working to identify people who would not be applying for funding themselves, but that can help inform the conversation and help those that might want to apply for funds sort of direct them how best to apply. And then here are some examples of eligible community projects that are in the final report. So it's fairly broad and I think well aligned with the survey results and what people in Northampton are interested in allocating funds for. And then the last piece of the pie are COVID mitigation and unidentified needs. So some of this are administrative expenses to manage the grant and fulfill reporting requirements, to help the community recovery reporting, that will be significant. And also for COVID-19 mitigation and public health activities, we want to reserve some funds as a buffer in case new COVID variants develop. And because our current COVID funding is slated to end this July with no other funding sources available. So we want to have some in reserve in case we need them for sort of immediate COVID needs. We also want to be sure that we can cover any of our costs associated with COVID. We are trying to figure out how much will be covered by FEMA. We know some of the things FEMA is not covering, so we need to be able to cover those costs as well. And we also just want to reserve some funds for things that could come up in the next couple of years that just hadn't been anticipated yet. So whether it's new investments or other, if someone hadn't applied for community recovery, but something sort of came up, we just want to make sure that we have some for unanticipated or unidentified needs that then will be rolled into other projects if those don't arise. And I believe that that is the end of the PowerPoint. I can go back to, I can see all your faces. So there you go. I'm happy to answer some questions, and Finance Director Nardi is also here. And we're happy to talk about it.
Thank you, Mayor. I had myself muted and was thanking you. Anyway, counselors, I see Counselor Gore and then Counselor Labarge have questions.
I was wondering, thanks for your presentation, Mayor. I was wondering if the money for identified, unidentified, kind of sources that would come down the line, is that going to have to be spent by 2024 or 2026, or is that going to last longer?
No, you're correct. So it would need to be appropriated by 2024 and then spent by 2026. So we need to be very careful, and we would make sure that those any sort of costs get appropriated out of that section first, and then could pull from that revenue loss if we need to. But thank you. That's a great question.
Yes.
Okay. Counselor Labarge.
Yes, I want to thank Counselor Gore. That was a main concern of mine on the appropriated time and the ending part of it. Another question, Mayor, is on community care. Would any of these benefits help us with community care with money, since it deals with mental health and so forth?
Yes, so these funds, they're sort of like how we treat capital improvements, right? So since these are one-time funds, we could look at using them for, building one-time expenses for community care if needed. But yes, you're right that there are some good intersections with the new department that we're starting.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Counselors.
And I really want to thank Counselors Foster and Moulton for being willing to participate on the advisory committee. We really appreciate the work that they're going to put into that.
It should be very fascinating. And I'm sure there's going to be some vibrant dialogue around this.
Oh, yeah.
So, okay, all right. Seeing no more questions, Mayor, thank you for that update. And we'll look forward to hearing how things play out on, both with the committee and these expenditures. So
thank you. And yes, so the committee, as I said, they will be planning public meetings. And so, I hope that you all will be engaged in that process. And, my hope is that they will, I don't know if maybe some of their meetings will be in person, some of them will be over Zoom. But we want to make sure that we are hitting all different areas of the city and making sure that we're reaching all stakeholders and anyone who would be interested in applying for these funds. So I'm going to look to the council to help get the word out about those.
That'd be great.
Actually, a question just popped in my head around municipal broadband, that initiative that got over 90% of the vote here. And is there any updates on progress around that? It looks like we can use some of these funds to get that started. Is there anything to share around that right now?
So we are still working in the feasibility study, and what we have done is sort of sent off sample neighborhoods so that that we feel are kind of representative of different areas and different concerns for broadband. And using that, they are going to be able to kind of give us the next part of the plan and tell us how we could start building it out.
Excellent. Okay. All right. I think, let's see, no other questions. Thank you, Mayor. And we're going to move on to the next thing on the agenda, which is the consent agenda. So on the consent agenda, let's look at what we have here. First of all, there's no discussion or debate on anything on the consent agenda, but any counselor can request a removal. So as I go through, if you Counselor, if you hear an item you'd like to pull out of the consent agenda for further discussion, feel free to do so. I'll go through the items here. We have the minutes of the March 3rd, 2022 meeting, our 6-hour meeting. And item B, we have 22.044, in order to appropriate $3,000 in CPA funds for Laurel Park historic signage. We have item C, 22.059, in order to transfer funds for Health Department Title V inspections. Item D, 22.062, in order to establish water and sewer rates for FY 2023, which we just had the hearing on. We have item E, 22.070, appointment to Conservation Commission. This is for a referral to city services for Paul Foster Moore of 147 Turkey Hill Road, Florence, to fill a term April 2022 to June 2025 to fill a vacancy. That is what's on the consent agenda. Are there any requests for removals? Okay, seeing no requests for removals, could I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Councilor Labarge, seconded by Councilor Elkins. There's no discussion. Laura, roll call, please.
Councilor Labarge.
Yes.
Councilor Maori.
Yes.
Councilor Moulton.
Yes.
Councilor Nash.
Yes.
Councilor Perry.
Yes.
Councilor Elkins.
Yes.
Councilor Foster.
Yes.
Councilor Gore.
Yes.
And Councilor Jarrett.
Yes.
Okay. Now we're up to number 8 on the agenda, financial orders in first reading. The first item here is 22.064, in order to transfer $1,460 from City Council OM to City Council PS. We have Director Nardi here, and or is she here? There she. Hello, Director Nardi.
Good evening.
And I'm going to try to explain this. Okay. All right. All right. So for our so that one of the things we noticed with our budget for this year was that we had funds remaining from our trainings and seminar line, which we didn't use because we largely didn't use because we didn't go to the MMA. And that Laura and I met with the mayor and Director Nardi, and we're going to reprogram $1,460.47. So $250 of that is going to go to the changes within the way counselors are compensated. So in the previous council, our mayor, who ran at large, won at large, was paid at $9,500 for the year, was elected council president, and that basically it only cost council another $500. By electing me council president, that actually bumped it up another $1,000 because I went from 9,000 to 10, and also, but actually, what we're covering here is the cost of a half year of an at-large counselor. So that's $250. And then there's also $510.47 that's for Laura's overtime over the last year. And then the last thing that we're allocating funds for has to do with we're allocating for this year, $700 for the select committee to study barriers to being involved in city government, to help fund somebody to help clerk the meetings. We've also requested to the mayor's office, we're going to have another $1,000, is that correct, Director Nardi, allocated for next year. So as that committee does its work, the clerking position can be paid. So that is what that item is about. Any questions? Councilor Labarge.
Yeah, could you just repeat? I didn't catch that one about hiring somebody for meetings or something?
Yes. So one of the things that when we created the select committee, that one of the concerns was asking our administrative assistant to take on, Laura, to take on more work. And it was actually Councilor Foster's idea to take a look at where our funds were at for this year and also to make a request for next year. And so what we saw was with the unspent trainings and seminars funds that we're reallocating that. So when we get this started, hopefully in the next month, that we can actually pay somebody in the clerking role to fill, much like Laura's doing.
Okay. Gotcha.
Okay. Mayor.
I just have an editorial comment that
Yeah.
while the council got a bargain with me as council president,
I just so.
I just want to say that without a doubt, I think your value added has already been proven, council president.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Yes, I think I'm earning that extra money. So, and really enjoying it, by the way. So, any more discussion on this item? Questions? Okay. I will entertain a motion to either send this. Oh, Councilor Perry.
Councilor Mayor.
I had a comment, I guess a question.
Okay, go ahead.
No, if we identify, trainings in the future that we think would be beneficial to offer counselors, I mean, is that something we can then kind of go and ask to be funded, or do we need to kind of have that done before? In other words, if we, we're about to have this select committee on barriers, maybe we'll decide we need racial equity training, something like that. How would we do that in terms of the money? Is that something we would kind of petition the mayor's office for, or do we need to have it in our budget?
Well, right now it's not in our budget.
Right. That's
but we could,
Should put it
make
in
the
there.
case for it with the mayor.
Okay, so we'll just have to make a case for the mayor. It's been brought up before, the idea of, expanding trainings for counselors. So that's why I just wanted to touch base about it. Thank you.
Well, and we do have that training line, and that the training line is always there, and that that in the past we've tended to use that to, go to the MMA, and it's actually cost quite a bit of money. And we haven't used it the last 2 years, but the prior year, which was the first year for a number of counselors here, I believe just about all of us went on the trip, and it cost quite a bit of money. We learned a lot, though. It was a very good trip. But yes, we could look at that.
So,
the mayor, you want to provide something here, and then I'll go to Councilor Moulton.
Yeah, I was just going to say that often I believe that line doesn't get fully used by the council. So you should certainly, if you identify trainings, there may be funds already available for that. But of course, we'd be happy to talk about it. And Director Nardi, were you going to say something too?
I was just going to say that, so although you're moving funds for the remainder of this year, next year there is going to be money in that line.
Right.
So starting on July 1st, you'll have that money, but yes. And then the procedure would be, for instance, say you identified a training that you all want to take before June 30th. Then you would do what we're doing here is, the council president would speak with the mayor and ask for a reserve transfer. Excuse me, not a reserve transfer, a transfer from free cash. in order to cover that, if that was the case. But next year you will have funding.
Thank you for that reminder and for breaking down the process, Director. Thank you.
Good idea.
And Counselor Moulton.
No, the mayor and Director Nardi addressed exactly what I was going to say, that we're not eliminating this from future budgets. It's only reallocating from this year's unspent money. And the training, I think, is important, not just MMA, which is a useful organization, but as Councilor Maori has pointed out, there may be other training opportunities that we'll want to take advantage of. So I think what we're doing now is fine. I just want to make sure that we're continuing to support in future budgets, setting aside money for potential training.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments or thoughts? Okay, we need to figure out whether we're going to send this to the consent agenda or send it over to finance.
Move to send it to the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, so that a motion to send it to the consent agenda made by Counselor Moulton and seconded by Counselor Jarrett is on the floor. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. Laura, roll call, please, to send to the consent agenda.
Counselor Moulton,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Perry,
Yes.
Counselor Elkins,
Yes.
Counselor Foster. Oh,
Counselor Foster looks frozen.
whoops, okay. All right, we'll come back to her. Counselor Gore.
So she's
Yes.
waiting.
Oh, Counselor Foster?
I think I'm back. I had frozen. I'm back. Were we voting in referral to the consent agenda?
We're voting on the order to transfer $1,460 in the council budget. You froze again. Maybe try turning off your video and we'll hear you.
Counselor Foster, are you in favor of transferring the money? If you're able to respond. Looks like we'll come
All right,
back.
keep going, Laura.
Perhaps. Okay, Counselor Gore,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
and Counselor Maori.
Yes.
And it looks like Counselor Foster is back.
Counselor Foster?
I'm back with a gap, though. Are we what are we voting on?
Good question. So we're voting on the budget transfer for the city council.
Got it. For referral to the consent agenda?
Yes.
Thank you. And yes.
Okay. Okay.
It seems to be messing with my internet a little bit. Is that possible? Or is that just a tall tale?
Are you getting delays too, Rachel?
Yeah, it says my internet is unstable.
Yeah.
That municipal broadband cannot come fast enough.
Needed it 2 years ago.
Okay. So, all right, now we're on to, with these delays, it slows everything down. Okay, we're on to item B, 22.065, in order to acquire property located on West Hampton Road. This is in first reading and, where is it? I bet Wayne is here to speak to this, correct, Mayor?
That is correct. He's got his camera on already and he's waiting.
Okay, yeah, let's, rather than me read, let's go right to Wayne, because he'll describe what these words mean. With pictures, hopefully. Oh, yeah, there we go. Wayne, I think you're muted.
Oh, he's a co-host, so
Okay, sorry about that. My fault.
No, that's good. Welcome, Wayne.
But I was brilliant at the time. You couldn't hear me, just so you know. So this is opportunity by 18.4 acres of land that's abuts the existing Mineral Hills Conservation Area. So on this plan that's here that hopefully you can see, this is Route 66. Glendale Road is here, West Hampton Road is here. So we're just west of Route 66. At the top of the screen is Mineral Hills Greenway, and at the bottom of the screen is Mineral Hills Greenway. We'd aspirationally called both these purchases, and we told this to City Council years ago when we bought these. We gave them the same name because we hoped we'd someday link them together. This 18.4 acres finally allows us to link them together, primarily for trail access. It's a pretty narrow parcel, so it's not a perfect parcel for wildlife corridor, but it's great for trails. So two separate transactions, but they're related. We'd be purchasing this property right here, this large property, 17.4 acres, and we get a donation of this 1 acre parcel down here that connects together. This is a consortium. So the neighbors, the abutters to this property wanted this to happen. They're contributing collectively $20,000 towards the purchase and contributing this parcel down here, which has another $15,000 value, more or less. Kestrel Land Trust is contributing. We have some CPA money, and we have some former donations. So we don't need any new appropriations. We have the funds. We're just asking City Council to approve the purchases.
Okay. Counselors, any questions? Oh, good. Thanks, Wayne. Oh, Counselor Labarge, yes. I don't know why I'm missing people tonight. Thanks.
It's that time of the night.
Yeah.
Thank you, Counselor. I just can't tell the counselors how valuable this property is in Ward 6. And Wayne is absolutely correct. For many, many years, we've been waiting for different parcels of land in Ward 6. And that also someday will go into, which they are, some of them going into Ward 7 and going further out and going through Portspit Road. And it's unbelievable what we're doing out here. And I don't know what we would do without Wayne, with all his knowledge of helping us. I want to say that this acquisition really provides both an ecological linkage and a trail linkage between the Mineral Hills Greenway on the north side of West Hampton Road, with also Mineral Hills Greenway on the south side of the road. Connecting the two sections of the Greenway has been a goal for many years and is reflected in the open space and recreation plan. And I know also too, we also had the Omastis, correct, Wayne, who also gave property, and everything is connecting here. And I have a meeting coming up soon, which I've talked with Wayne, with another resident very concerned about their children. We have no sidewalks at all on West Hampton Road, West Farms Road, Sylvester Road, many roads in Ward 6 and even in 7 that we don't have sidewalks. And they want to be able to, especially on West Hampton Road, to eventually connect over up onto Florence Road somehow, instead of being on the road with little children in that. So I think we're getting there, Wayne. Probably in another 5 more years, we'll probably be connecting everywhere. So thank you for all your help. And we all appreciate it in Ward 6. Thank you.
Counselor Jarrett.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited about the expansion of this greenway. It's a very beautiful area. I noticed you referred to it as a bargain sale, and is that because this is an otherwise developable parcel?
Yes, it was somewhat contested, frankly. It was unclear if the Conservation Commission would give them a permit for a driveway, but they obtained a permit a few months ago. So yes, it's definitely a developable parcel. It's assessed by the city at $168,000, and I don't really know exactly what the market would give it, but we're assuming the assessors, which is they're charging that for taxes, so that's the correct number.
Thank you.
Counselor Labarge.
Yeah, I forgot. I want to thank Blake and Lynn Simmons and their children for the beautiful donation they have given for their property. And also, I want to thank the Segals also. Their property is absolutely beautiful. I've been there, and I don't know what we do with having residents like this who give good amounts of money, along with people who also help us out to have these trails happen. And I also want to thank the builder also, who's been building in that area, for also doing what he's doing for Ward 6. So I wanted to bring that out. But thank you definitely to my residents for using their own money as a donation. It's very appreciated.
Okay. Counselors, any more discussion on this? I will entertain a motion to either the consent agenda or to finance.
I would like to send this to the consent agenda.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Counselor Labarge, seconded by Counselor Moulton. Any discussion on the motion to send this item to the consent agenda? Seeing and hearing none. Laura, roll call to send this to the consent agenda.
Counselor Moulton,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Perry,
Yes.
Counselor Elkins,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Gore,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
and Counselor Maori.
Yes.
Thank you, counselors.
Okay. All right, that brings us to item C, 22.068, in order to appropriate free cash to support FY 2022 JFK pool program. This is in first reading. Let's pull this order up. No, that's not it. Where'd it go? There it is. In order to appropriate free cash to support FY 2022 JFK pool program, whereas the COVID-19 pandemic has had a significant impact on recreational programming and the ability to collect fees, which has resulted in less revenue, whereas the Parks and Recreation Department has continued to operate select programs when safely possible over the last 18 months, using and depleting existing funds in the JFK Pool Revolving Fund, whereas the city wishes to support the Parks and Recreation programs in FY 22 as we rebuild revolving fund reserves and assess the long-term impacts on programming revenue streams. Ordered that $27,308 from the FY 22 general fund undesignated fund balance free cash be appropriated and added to the Parks and Recreation Department to support the staffing of the FY 22 pool program. Mayor, Director Nardi.
Yes, thank you. So the JFK, or the programs that the recreational Parks and Rec runs generally brings in, like in FY 18 and FY 19, they bring in about $100,000 for these programs, and the program's cost to runs from about $92,000 to $100,000 every year. Because of COVID, the pool was shut down. It was shut down from March 2020 till I think May of 2021. So during that time, if you remember, a lot of staff were continuing to be paid, especially the full-time staff. And then they continued to run some programs, especially outside when they could. And the pool has opened up. I believe it opened a little bit in the summer of 2021. And then it opened up in the fall, but we have not brought in the kind of revenue that we were before, but we continue to run programs. So this year, we have continued to run programs, but not bringing in the revenue, we have depleted the revolving fund. So therefore, everybody knows these programs are so important to the community. We want to continue to support them because we don't want them to go away. So we are asking that you fund the remainder of this year with these funds. It will pay for $21,408 in payroll for the recreation supervisor, the desk folks who work the desk at the pool, and the lifeguards for the remainder of this year. And then $5,900 will be used for the yoga program, the master swim coach, and the water aerobics. Generally, the fees from those programs pay for the trainer or the person who's running the program, but we have been using those funds. Like I said, the revenue hasn't been coming in, so we've depleted those. So that is our request. I'll answer any questions.
Yes.
Councillor Labarge, then Councillor Maori.
Shalene, on this order on 22.068, I thought this was only an order to appropriate free cash to support for the year 2022 JFK pool program.
So yeah,
but this also, I'm hearing now from you that there's other activities involved in this, correct? This money that we're looking at?
Yes, I apologize. So I guess it's called the JFK Pool Revolving Fund is the one that has depleted, but it is the Parks and Rec program, which includes yoga, the aerobic instructors. It also includes the basketball, but that's not one of the ones that this money will actually pay for. So it does include a little more of the programs. Their fees get put into that revolving fund and get used.
Thank you. I appreciate you explaining that.
Okay, Councillor Maori.
Yeah, Director, this might not be a question for you, but I'm just curious if they have found a custodian for the weekends at the pool, because partly, I know we haven't been able to use the pool and give our money to the program because there hasn't been a custodian. It seems like that, and I know the tennis program, there's some trouble finding staff.
So yes, I have heard that in these discussions and have been brought up to speed on that. We are still looking. Yes, in the program, the memberships that you're talking about brings in about $25,000 a year to the program. So that's a big loss for the city. Wow. But I know, the mayor is in discussions with the Parks and Rec director in how best to solve that. So we're working on it.
Yeah, I'll just add, in my last discussion with Director Mojo, they had not yet found someone to fill that position, and that's been incredibly, incredibly hard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if you know anybody.
I actually, like, one weekend when I really wanted to bring the kids swimming, I'm like, can I take that job? That's a conflict of interest because I just want that.
Yeah, unfortunately, if you know anyone who's not an elected official.
Yeah, too bad. Okay, yeah.
I know the feeling, Councillor Maori. Just go down and we'll clean things up and people can swim.
I know.
Maybe if I volunteer.
Okay, any more discussion on this? Okay, so I will entertain a motion to either send this to the consent agenda of our next meeting or to send it to finance.
I'd like to move this to the consent agenda.
Okay, and
Sorry.
Second.
Councillor
second
Nash.
by Councillor Moulton, but I see Councillor Jarrett has his hand raised.
I'm sure Councillor Jarrett's going to address what I was going to say. So go ahead, Councillor Jarrett.
Councillor Jarrett as well.
Two readings are requested on this item, so the procedure would be to suspend the rules.
Okay. Yeah, yes, okay. So, thank you. Okay, so Councillor Labarge, would you be willing to let go of your motion there and we can entertain another motion to suspend the rules?
Yes, I'd like to suspend. Yeah, I'll suspend.
Yeah, okay, so you'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules and approve this tonight?
Yes.
I'll second that.
Okay. All right, so now we have a motion on the floor to approve this item tonight. Motion was made by Councilor Labarge, seconded by Councilor Moulton. Any discussion? Seeing none. Laura, roll call, please.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Perry,
Yes.
Counselor Elkins,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Gore,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes, and we're just voting on suspending the rules.
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
and Counselor Moulton.
Yes.
Okay, we are voting suspending the rules has passed. Now I will entertain a motion to approve this tonight.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so we'll say the motion was made by Counselor Moulton, seconded by Counselor Jarrett. Any discussion? Hearing none. Laura, roll call on approving this tonight.
Counselor Perry,
Yes.
Counselor Elkins,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Gore,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
and Counselor Moulton.
Yes.
Whoops, and Counselor Nash.
Yes. Okay. We suspended the rules and we passed order 22.068, and now we're on to 22.069. In order to authorize expending gift money for holiday lights. This order I did several double takes on it because of the size of the amount of money here. Let's see, where is it? 22.069, in order to authorize expending gift money for holiday lights, ordered that Northampton City Council, in accordance with Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53A, Grants and Gifts, Acceptance and Expenditure, authorizes the expenditure of $44 from Fund 2525, the funds remaining from an FY 2015 donation for holiday lights in the city towards the FY 22 holiday light invoice. Mayor, Director Nardi.
Yes, first I'd just like to say thank you very much for your consideration of 2 readings of the last order. I do appreciate it. So this order, yes, this huge order for $44. So the city auditor works with my office to help identify funds that have been sitting and inactive for some time. This is one of those funds. Gift funds, as the order states, you must actually authorize expenditures. And I was unable to find an order. With Laura's help, she looked to see if we had an order that authorized the expenditure of the funds. The last time this fund was touched was FY 2015. And the outside auditor and the city auditor doesn't like to see money sit. We like to, if it's given for a purpose, we want to spend it. So I'm asking for these remaining funds of $44 to be used this year towards the FY 22 invoice that we have sitting waiting to be paid.
Okay. Any questions, councilors? So I just want to say that I called Director Nardi after reading this order. It's like, what, $44? Oh my gosh. And I just appreciate the level of detail that our city government goes into around our finances. We're talking $125 million that the city is managing every year. And here's $44, and we're transparent. We're keeping our eye on the details here, and we're going to move this $44 into an account where we can use it. And this is really terrific. So any more discussion? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to send this to the consent agenda for our next meeting.
Make a motion to move it to the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, so motion made by Counselor Perry, seconded by Counselor Foster. Any discussion? Okay, Laura, roll call, please, to send this to the consent agenda.
Counselor Elkins,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Gore,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Moulton,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
and Counselor Perry.
Yes.
Okay. That item has been sent to the consent agenda of our next meeting. Now we're up to item E 22.071 in order to approve $50,000 from short-term rental impact fees to affordable housing. This is in first reading. Let me see, what do we got here? Mayor, maybe you want to just speak to this rather than have me read something, or is it Wayne is going to speak to this?
I think that Wayne is going to speak to it, it looks like.
Yeah.
Thank you. Again, I'm going to share my screen with you. So this is the former nursing home on Bridge Road, which has been empty. I'm not quite sure for how long, but certainly well over a decade. And it's sort of a horrible eyesore. Valley Community Development Corporation purchased the property about a month ago with a partner. And it's their intention to go forward and develop this into affordable units. I think they just have a working number, which I think is 63 affordable units, or a mix of affordable and workforce housing. They're working with the neighborhood. Council Moulton's been very helpful in helping convene people and getting a conversation. I will say, when we hold public hearings on our citywide plans, we almost always hear people say how important affordable housing is. When we have specific affordable housing projects, we almost always hear people say affordable housing is really important, but not here. In the very first meeting, we had some of that, but since then, the neighborhood's totally focused on legitimate issues. We always want neighborhoods to weigh in on trees and circulation and all those sorts of things. And they've been really good about focusing on what do they need for it to work. So great project. Some of you may know, if you've been around for a while, that the city spends a lot of money supporting affordable housing, but it's really a tiny percentage of a project. So the rule of thumb I use in my head, and this isn't an exact figure, is that we might put in 5% of the cost of housing when they're rental units, right? So it doesn't sound like a lot, but it leverages a lot of money. In this case, this is probably a $20 million development project. They're asking the city for $1 million towards that, which again, $1 million is obviously a lot of money, but when you assume affordable units are coming in about $400,000 a unit, it means we have a relatively, as I say, 5% contribution for it. So they're asking for $1 million. It's going to come in 3 different places. So what's before you tonight is $50,000 from what's officially called the short-term housing impact fees. Unofficially, it's the impact fees we get from Airbnb. Not a huge sum of money. We get about $25,000 a year. So this would basically clean out the funds we've collected in the 2 years since City Council adopted this. Those of you who were here 2 years ago remember that when Council approved that at the then mayor's request, you put in the order that that money specifically goes for affordable housing. The theory being that we know Airbnb sometimes stakes units away from the market, and so it's fair mitigation. The mayor, in her, as you know, you don't approve the CDBG budget. The mayor, in her current action plan, we just held a public hearing 2 nights ago, has put in about $286,000 in block grant, and is currently request pending before Community Preservation Act for about $664,000. Obviously, I don't know what CPC will recommend. I hope they recommend in favor, and if they do, that will come back to council. So we originally thought we'd just hold this and do all the money at the same time, but because Valley purchased the property already, they have interest costs. So we just thought if council's willing to approve it, we can at least move forward on this 50,000, and then the other pieces will move forward over time. So this map's just where it is. So, you know, even though it's not in downtown or Florence, it's walking distance to a substantial amount of commercial area on King Street. The bus service is not great here, but there is bus service, so it hits a lot of our goals of encouraging all housing, and particularly affordable housing, close to bus routes and in walking distance for commercial areas.
Thank you, Wayne. Councillor Labarge, then Councillor Jarrett.
Yes. Wayne, how many apartments are going to be placed there? Is it, I'm hearing two different numbers. Is it 50 or 60?
So they're still going through their due diligence. They did an initial assessment, I believe it was 63 units. But of course, as they get deep, I mean, they did enough assessment to make sure that they knew what the value of the property was and to make sure it would work. As they get further into the program, they may move things around, right? So, you know, we hear from our housing partnership that we need more family housing because family housing is desperately needed. But we hear from affordable housing providers that their wait list is actually longer for studios and one bedroom. So they're going to be tinkering a little bit with those numbers. And we know the square footage of the building, it's how many bigger units and how many small units they still be tinkering with a little bit.
So these are affordable houses, right?
Yeah, most will be affordable. Some are what we call workforce housing. So affordable by federal definition is affordable to families earning no more than 80% of area median income, but the funding stream is really for families earning much less. So typically we're talking about families earning 30 to 60% of median income, and there'd be a few units that are workforce housing, which is up to 100% of area median income. And we always encourage mixed income, so they're all desperately needed, and all housing units to the market's not supplying.
Yeah.
But within that affordable category, there's still mix.
Mm-hmm. I think it's great that this is happening because that's just been sitting there for quite a long, long time. It's in deplorable condition. I mean, you drive by there, everybody I talk to, and I know many people in Ward 1, and they keep saying, what are they going to be doing with that building? And I'm happy to hear that. I support this at the 50,000 right now, and to help us get moving on this, because this is just the beginning. There is a lot of work to be done on that site. And hopefully there's going to be more meetings and so forth going on, because I just think it's a very good piece of property to put affordable housing in there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Jarrett.
Thank you. Yeah, I think this is a great project. I'm excited to have this many units going in. The concern that I have about the location, you know, you mentioned that it is within a short distance to many places, but safe pedestrian and bicycle access to those locations is somewhat difficult. For example, there's no sidewalk on Prospect Avenue, and the, you know, walking or biking to the shopping centers can be pretty tricky. Also, the bus stop is currently across Bridge Road, depending on the direction you're going. So that is a very treacherous thing to try to cross Bridge Road at Hatfield Street. So I just wanted to make sure that is part of the process, that we, you know, we'll see these improvements that will allow for safer bicycling and pedestrian and public transit.
Yes and no, quite frankly. So we're certainly very interested. I mean, the safe way to get to Big Y, for example, for exactly the reason you said, walking down Hatfield is not safe and the crossing isn't safe. Mm-hmm. The safe way to get there is to go down Bridge Road and then go, you know, turn left at Jackson Street and go that way. We have, ever since the past principal for Jackson Street pointed out how bad the sidewalks are in the northerly half of Jackson Street, we've been looking for funding to replace those sidewalks. It's in the queue eventually for something called Complete Streets. So we're looking for funds for those sidewalks. We're looking at, the mayor's approved us looking at, so as a condition of their project, Valley would have to put sidewalks on Prospect along their property. The mayor's approved us looking at, and this is still a few years out, another 150 feet south on Prospect to the first cross street. I think that's Ridgeview Terrace, which then is safe to walk. So we're looking at all those distances. But doing something to Cross Bridge Road is a huge, it's a 7-figure number to make improvements, and that would not be Valley's obligation. So we need to, I don't disagree with you at all, Counselor, everything you said, and we need to think about how do we make that safer, but that's not, Valley does not have an obligation to fix existing deficiencies. They have an obligation to make things not worse. So agree with you, but that piece still has to be solved.
Counselor Moulton, then Counselor Gore.
Thank you. I want to say that this is as I've mentioned before, this is a very consequential project for not only Ward 1 and the surrounding neighborhood, but the entire city. And I think that the support of the council of this initial $50,000 request is as an important indicator of the city's support for a project that will not only vastly improve the property that has been vacant for over a decade, but also provide something that is strongly needed here in more affordable housing. It's in the very early stages, but I've already been part of 2 neighborhood meetings that Valley CDC has held. One via Zoom last month, and one just yesterday afternoon on site at the former nursing home. And Valley CDC, Laura Baker and her team from the Berkshire Design Group made a presentation of the latest plan, particularly addressing some of the traffic concerns that neighbors have expressed. And in my view, have been Valley CDC has been very responsive to those concerns. Carolyn Mish was also there with me yesterday, listening and answering questions. About 35 people were there, and the response has been extremely positive, both to the reuse of the property and to the notion of the best use for that property is affordable housing. And as Director Fiden said, the concerns have focused on neighborhood issues, many of which Councillor Jarrett just identified, about safety for motor vehicles, pedestrians, bicyclists, the need for more sidewalks. So this is a win-win project, and I certainly urge support for this. Having said all that, I do think I'd like to recommend that this go to the Finance Committee, just to ensure as we continue on with this, the widest possible involvement or engagement of the community on it. So I'll move that we send this to Finance Committee with the understanding that I'm hugely supportive.
Okay. I'm going to, I hear your motion, Councillor Moulton. I'm going to go to Councillor Gore, and then we'll see if we can get it. We'll come back to that.
I just want to agree with what everybody else said. I got a call from a constituent who lives in that area, though, who has the traffic concerns that Councillor Jarrett brought up, and also the concern about having an entrance on Bridge Road, which could cause more traffic congestion. And so the issue of more traffic in that area is kind of concerning to me, because it's already a really busy area around that Bridge Road area. And I think more sidewalks would be definitely a plus for people to walk to King Street to access the bus, because the bus comes in the shopping plaza. So I think those need to be considered, especially with affordable housing, where maybe not people might not have cars. So I think it needs to be taken into consideration. But I'm all for this project. I'm really excited about it, and I think it's a great idea.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, Councillor Moulton.
Yes, I would second. Oh, sorry, I was going to second.
Oh, okay. So yeah, so Councillor Moulton made a motion. And then a delayed second.
Yeah.
By Councillor Maori. Okay, so the motion is to send this to Finance for further input.
Yep.
And I suppose it would be going to Finance next Tuesday.
Well, yeah, except we now need to talk.
Oh yeah, we need to figure it. So whenever that is, okay. So
it's an exclusive club. You have to be in the know. But I will let.
All right.
We'll have it without me.
Any more discussion on the referral to finance?
I was just going to say that, I was definitely going to engage Councilor Moulton on this in terms of, the temperature in the ward and whether this should go to finance. That was my hunch that it's one of those items that that could use as much public interfacing as possible. So I'm grateful for Councilor Moulton for letting us know that.
Excellent. Well, I just want to add two things. First of all, that I completely concur with the sidewalks. If you have sidewalks and you have public transit, you're going to have less traffic. And also that by having access to other forms of transportation, you're really enhancing affordability. The case in point is the lumberyard project over on Pleasant Street. When it was first proposed, I was very leery of the idea of we're going to have, I think Wayne, correct me if I'm wrong, 52, 54 apartments with 42 parking spaces. And I was like, this is not going to work. And it absolutely does work. And that there are still spaces available for residents over at the lumberyard. Also to speak to that is over at Live 155, also on Pleasant Street. There is no parking. And I while I was on the TPC and I continued to attend the TPC, I've never heard a complaint about the lack of parking for Live 155. And in both of these places, it has to do with there's lots of pedestrian and public transportation available. So anything we can do to enhance that is really going to address neighbors' concerns and enhance the affordability of these units. So, and the last thing I want to say is Valley CDC is great. That their work with the neighbors and with developing the project in the lumberyard. I can't say enough about the wonderful new neighbors we have over there. That this is, people worry about what's coming, and yes, it's human to be worried, but I'm also letting you know there's some really great people coming, and it'll be great. So anyway, so we have a motion on the floor to refer this to finance. Any more discussion? All right, Laura, roll call, please.
Councillor Foster,
Yes.
Councillor Gore,
Yes.
Councillor Jarrett,
Yes.
Councillor Labarge,
Yes.
Councillor Maori,
Yes.
Councillor Moulton,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Councillor Perry,
Yes.
and Councillor Elkins.
Yes.
Okay.
Council President, I'd like to request a 5-minute recess.
Thank you.
Sure, let's do that. 5 minutes.
Thanks.
You gonna stick around, Wayne? Okay. I told you I could do it on my own, but all right, you stick around. All right. All right. All right, we'll get started. People will pop back in here. Most of the council is here. We're up to orders. We have 2 orders here, and they're related to the announcement for the public hearings that we had at the start of the meeting. We have item 22.066, an order authorizing acquisition of easements for alteration of public ways for Mass Safe Routes to School program. That is in first reading. And then we have an order that basically goes together with this in order to alter the layout of portions of certain streets, Parsons Street, Union Street, Pomeroy Terrace, Hawley Street, and Holyoke Street. And process note, the process for the laying out, alteration, relocation, and discontinuance of public ways is spelled out in Mass General Law, Chapter 82, Section 1. The city solicitor has described the procedure the city council is to follow based on the steps set forth in this statute. The council or an authorized committee thereof must hold a hearing to adjudicate whether convenience and necessity require the laying out of the way. So these are in first reading, and we're also considering where we're going to have this public hearing. And we've pre-announced that the hearing will be on the 14th, and we're going to be holding it. And one of the things we want to discuss is whether or not we're going to recess for finance to have that hearing, or whether or not we're going to hold that hearing in the full council like we did earlier with the water rates. And just so you know, Councilor Maori and I have had a discussion about this, and that I want to make sure that we're empowering our committees, and at the same time we're jumping through some hoops here for Director Fiden to make sure we can get these items approved and in the pipeline so we can get the Safe Routes to program going. So Councilor Maori and I discussed the idea of recessing for finance at our next meeting, and I think we kind of concur that's the way to go, correct, Councilor Maori?
Yes, that was my opinion.
So, and then I think we need to figure out their orders. So yes, they'll just be on the agenda for second reading at our next meeting. So, Wayne, can you just give a quick overview and maybe, that the map, just to kind of run through it as to, where these takings might be taking place and what they're looking like. They're actually tiny slivers of land along various, largely along Parsons Street, but there's a few other locations, and that we've had people who've donated these little slivers, and in some cases we need to pay people for these. Help me out, Wayne.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So just very quick background. So we received a grant worth approximately $1 million for the design of this complete street. So it's about $150,000 for engineering, $850,000 for construction. The money never actually comes to the city. MassDOT hires the engineer directly. MassDOT oversees the construction, oversees cost override. So it's actually ideal from the city, because when we get grants, there's always some risk to the city. The only part of this that's really a city obligation is both working closely in the design, which we've been doing for 2 years now, and the takings. That's the city's responsibility. So these, as Councilor Nash said, these are tiny slivers. My favorite one is where we are taking 1 square feet, and we have to do an appraisal. We had to do a review appraisal. We had to write a check for 1 square feet. So 1 square foot. but we're responsible for doing that. Every single one of these properties we did. So there are 10 permanent easements, places where we're actually widening the sidewalk, and 22 temporary easements. The temporary easements are basically for regrading. In one case, cutting down hedges where there's a school crossing guard by the elementary school was hit and part because line of sight's not very good. We're taking down some hedges. That takes a temporary taking. 3 of them are against the school department. The school department's voted unanimously to support it. Other people have voted, as Counselor said, we've gotten 3 donations. We've had people concurred. So we haven't heard any opposition. Nobody seems to mind losing the land because it's not very much. A couple people don't like losing their hedges, but they don't really seem to be concerned. So I'll just walk you through these things very quickly so you see what we're doing. The biggest part, as Councilor Nash said, is on Parsons Street. From North Street all the way to Parsons Street, none of that sidewalk is safe in a wheelchair, and none of it really is particularly safe even not in a wheelchair. It's in horrible condition, both the sidewalk and the crosswalks. We're going to rebuild the sidewalks and make them 5.5 feet wide. So a little bit wide. Right now they're about 4 feet wide, but there's a grass strip between the sidewalk and the street. That's why we don't need a lot of takings. So I'll just take you through here. So very quickly, going on Parsons Street, wherever you see a shading here, those are the takings. So they're, again, not very big. Like this one right here is 45 square feet. That's actually one of the larger ones over here. This one over here is the one I said my favorite one. We're taking literally 1 square feet. This set of plans is only for the permanent easements. I have a separate set I can show you for the temporary easements, but they're similar. So going down Parsons, here's the biggest strip of land. This gray area seems very large, but in fact, it's most of what we're taking is existing sidewalks. So, you know, when streets were laid out in 1680, the surveys weren't very good. And so the sidewalks were built. And so a lot of the sidewalk was built in private land. So in this area, it looks like a big taking, but in fact, at the end of the day, it's the same sliver we're doing elsewhere. We're just taking the sidewalk so we own it. We are releasing, so this is all on the west side of Parsons Street. We are releasing a small section of land on the east side where Parsons Street abuts the cemetery. And it's actually possible that people are buried right up in this area. We don't really think people should be buried in a road. So we're releasing that section of road, or if council approves, we're releasing a section of road, but that just comes back to the cemetery division. It would no longer be considered, so nothing on that side would look any different. It just would become, you know, owned by the cemeteries instead of owned by the road. When we get up to Union Street, again, small taking. This is the area you don't see in this one because this is the permanent takings. This is the area of the biggest temporary takings. This is where ironically, and she was not badly hurt, so I can say that in this way, but ironically, crossing guard was hit the day we submitted press send on this application. So we take it very seriously. So we're cutting back hedges. We're making this into a 3-way stop and making it more right turn. So currently the road layout's much closer to Bridge Street School than it will be. So we're making it more of a right turn. So those are the temporary takings here. You could do the same thing again for, permanent takings, same thing for temporary takings. I'm not going to spend as much time on this. And then when we go down Hawley Street, there are no permanent takings, but there are some temporary takings. So in front of Northampton Community Arts Trust, who they love this, they were very happy because they were about halfway through replacing the sidewalks themselves when this grant came through. So you notice about half their sidewalks are concrete, half are asphalt. They replaced sidewalks till the day the grant came through, then they stopped, and we're taking that over. And then further down at 123 Hawley Street, I don't seem to have that view with me here. We're doing some small takings there, again, to correct it. And then right in front of the Pomeroy Terrace condominium. And that condominium voted and they unanimously supported the project. They didn't waive our taking, the fee we're paying, but they unanimously supported the project. I have much more, and then this is the list of all these things. So you can see no one person gets rich from our taking. it just adds up when you do this. So on this list, I won't go through all of them unless people want, but the E, where it says E, those are the permanent easements. Where it says TE, those are the temporary easements. So, the biggest check we write is for $10,000. That's where we actually, the sidewalk itself is on private property. So most of them are very small, but it still adds up to $44,200. The mayor set aside, or the last mayor actually set aside $20,000 from block grant. $15,600 went to the appraisal. The remaining $4,400 helps for the takings, and the remainder of the takings come. City Council released a small sliver of land on Sherman Avenue a couple of years ago, so that a house didn't have to be torn down. And at the time, we dedicated the funding for making traffic improvements in Ward 3 in this area. So that's what's paying for the rest of these takings.
Wayne, how many temporary easements are we looking at?
There are 22 temporary easements.
And how about permanent?
10.
10 of them? Okay.
And all of this will get reviewed in 2 weeks at the public hearing.
And we always are very careful when we do takings about complying with state law, but with MassDOT, there's even extra steps. So we wrote everybody a year and a half ago to offer to meet with them, and a few people met with us. We made some changes. We wrote everybody 4 months, or I guess a month and a half ago, to give them 30 days notice. We're coming to City Council. We just sent them out a notice today for your upcoming public hearing. So we've had a lot of conversations. Some abutters have reached out to us often, some not at all, but they've certainly all had the opportunity.
Councilor Moulton.
So the payments are based on an appraisal by the city or an independent appraiser?
So we actually hired two things. We hired an independent appraiser, and this is a MassDOT requirement, a review appraiser. We're required always to do a single appraisal anyway, but in this case, we had a second set of eyes on them.
And what's the process if a property owner disagrees with the appraisal?
So they can contest it. If you look at the takings document, it says we could come back. So if they convinced us, we can offer them more. I don't think they're likely to, because we've been so careful about the appraisal and the review appraisal, but we can certainly re-examine it if they convince us it's worth more. They certainly always have the right to go to court. There's always a tail for takings. There's clearly public purpose, so they wouldn't win that we couldn't take it. But if they convince the jury that it's worth more, they could. The problem is you're seeing, the cost, even if we're wrong, if Eric's 1 foot is worth $20 instead of $10, he's probably not going to object. But we trust the independent appraisals, and we had no influence on them whatsoever. We didn't suggest anything whatsoever.
Thank you.
I should add in something. The appraiser also reached out, in addition to our outreach, the appraisal also reached out to everybody and offered them the chance to walk with her, and many of them took advantage of it. So they could say to her, here's the reason we think our property is particularly important or particularly valuable.
Okay, Councilor Foster.
Me a little bit to unmute. Wayne, thank you for that information. That's really helpful to hear about how much contact there's been with the homeowners, or that was really helpful as I was looking through that plan. Provides quite a bit of context, and just wanted to say what a great project this is, as the parent of 2 kiddos who go to Bridge Street School, trying to navigate that, trying to bike down Parson Street and walk down there to get them to school. This is I think this is going to be a huge improvement for that neighborhood. And so anyway, I look forward to the public hearing and to hearing more, but I'm just glad to see this moving forward.
Thanks.
Okay, Mayor.
I just want to jump in also and echo what Councilor Foster just said. As a parent of one Bridge Street student, I've spent a lot of time over there and navigating those tricky streets. And so I want to thank Director Biden for all of the work on this, but I also want to acknowledge Council President Nash, who this has really been a labor of love for him, and he's worked very hard on this. So thank you both and everyone else that's worked on this. It will make a huge difference.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, so what's on the floor, or do we have a motion yet?
No.
No.
Okay, so we need to figure out where, well, first of all, yeah, so we're going to hold a public hearing. We need to figure out who's going to hold the hearing, finance or the full city council. And the council president and the chair of finance think it would be great if this went to finance. Councilor Foster.
Yeah, I'd be in support of it being in the finance committee. And I really appreciate that it's scheduled actually as a recess during a full council meeting. I think, looking at this many takings, it's going to be of general interest to the full council. So I appreciate finance committee recessing during a full council meeting, just to, make sure that we have that opportunity to see all of that as well. Do you need a motion for that? Or I don't want to cut off discussion, but.
Yeah, we actually, not each of, I had it in my notes here. So we need to, we don't need to suspend the rules because it's an order. Okay, yeah, so we need a motion to hold the hearing with finance.
Move to have the hearing held in finance committee during the April 14th council meeting.
Okay.
So it's going to be held at city council meeting?
Yes, it'll be like old school finance meeting.
That's fine.
Okay, I figured you'd be good with that. So a motion made by Councilor Foster, seconded by Councilor Labarge to hold the hearing for the Safe Routes to School during finance at our next council meeting where we recess for finance.
Yep.
Any more discussion? Laura, roll call, please.
Councilor Gore,
Yes.
Councilor Jarrett,
Yes.
Councilor Labarge,
Yes.
Councilor Maori,
Yes.
Councilor Moulton,
Yes.
Councilor Nash,
Yes.
Councilor Perry,
Yes.
Councilor Elkins,
Yes.
and Councilor Foster.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Council President, can I just ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Or make a request, actually. So for these items that are going to be on the finance agenda, can someone just be in touch with my office with whoever you would like to have appear at those meetings?
Right.
Since I won't be able to be at the April 14th meeting, but yes, it would be helpful for staff to know who is being requested to attend.
So the one item, I think we only have one item, correct, Laura? That is going to finance, and that is the $50,000 for short-term rental, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So we do need to land on a date, and then and Mayor, if somebody could be at finance to speak to that. Okay, Councilor Foster.
And a point of order question, because our council rules actually, I realized it a little too late tonight, but our council rules have public hearings as the first item on the agenda. So if this item is referred to Finance Committee for public hearing, would that be first on April 14th? And this could also just be another conversation. I just wanted to check on that.
Yeah, that's a good question. We'll have to figure out where to put the recess for finance in the agenda because it's no longer part of the agenda. So
President has discretion about moving agenda items, correct? Yeah.
Right, but we'll have to insert a item into the agenda that wasn't in there. So you know what? Councilor Maori and I will meet with Laura and discuss this, and we will figure this out, and we will make sure this will happen on the 14th. How's that?
I would like you to involve me with that, Counselor Nash.
Very good. We will do that as well, Counselor Labarge. Okay. All right, so now we are up to our last item, which is under resolutions, item 22.060, a resolution in support of H 3126, an act providing for a gender neutral designation on state documents and identifications. This is in second reading.
Excuse me, Counselor Nash, don't we still need, I mean, we decided that the public hearing will be held in finance, but don't we still need to refer those two orders, 22066 and 067, to either finance committee or the consent agenda? Like, will finance be requested or expected to make a recommendation on these two orders? I thought it would be a separate vote to what to do with these two orders. Maybe I didn't understand the first vote, but I thought that was just deciding that finance would be the one that would hold the hearing.
Well,
am I the only one who?
Well, that's fair. Okay,
another vote.
So I was assuming since finance was holding the hearing, they would also be discussing the items.
Okay.
And that, but we could also make a motion to refer these to the hearing. To really put a fine point on things, if somebody wants to make a motion. Is that what you're asking?
Or even just referring them simply to the finance committee for the finance committee to make a recommendation on those two orders.
Okay.
At city council.
Right, and then the council also would vote on them after the finance committee makes that recommendation. I'm assuming they would also be on the council's agenda.
Correct.
Right.
Unless anyone else thinks of it differently.
You know what, Laura, I'm going to trust you on this, and I'll entertain a motion to refer these two items. Let me read the 22.066 and 22.067 to Finance Committee.
Move for referral. Second.
Okay, so Councilor Moulton seconded. Who made the motion?
We did it at the same time, so.
Oh, Councilor Foster made the motion and seconded by Councilor Moulton. Any further discussion? Okay, Laura, roll call, please, on referring these items to finance.
Councilor Jarrett.
Yes.
Councilor Labarge.
Yes.
Councilor Maori.
Yes.
Councilor Moulton.
Yes.
Councilor Nash.
Yes.
Councilor Perry.
Yes.
Councilor Elkins.
Yes.
Councilor Foster.
Yes.
And Councilor Gore.
Yes.
Thanks.
All right, cool. All right. Now we're on to resolutions. I just read 22.060. Any discussion about this resolution? There was some discussion last time. Any follow-up discussion? Any further thoughts since the last time we met? Councilor Maori.
Right. I just wanted to properly thank the sponsors that I can do now without coughing and being offensive. So I thank you for this, and I actually really enjoyed hearing your own stories, and it just makes resolutions like this just make me really appreciate the council we have. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Okay, Councilor Foster.
Thanks, Councilor Maori. And also just wanted to note that today is the International Transgender Day of Visibility. So it's, I'm glad we're voting on this tonight.
Whippy. A good one.
Councilor Elkins.
And I would just briefly add that I want to give Karen, Councilor Foster, all the credit for helping plan this so that it coincided exactly with this day. when we realized that it was passing today and that it was happening today. It was such a happy coincidence. So I'm very proud to have worked on it with you, Councilor Foster, and I'm grateful to be on this council and in this city where we're passing a resolution like this on a particularly appropriate day for it. So I guess I can move that we pass the resolution.
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion for second reading on this resolution? Well, I just want to thank the sponsors and roll call. Laura, please.
Councilor Maori.
Yes.
Oops. Okay, Councilor Moulton,
Yes.
Councilor Nash,
Yes.
Councilor Perry,
Yes.
Councilor Elkins,
Yes.
Councilor Foster,
Yes.
Councilor Gore,
Yes.
Councilor Jarrett,
Yes.
and Councilor Labarge.
Yes.
Okay. Let's see, we don't have any information requests. Is there any new business? Okay, seeing none, that brings us to item 18, adjourn. I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion.
So
Second.
Seconded by, all right, motion made by Councilor Labarge, seconded by Councilor Perry, I think. Okay, no discussion on adjournment. Laura, roll call, please.
Councilor Labarge,
Yes.
Councilor Maori,
Yes.
Councilor Moulton,
Yes.
Councilor Nash,
Yes.
Councilor Perry,
Yes.
Councilor Elkins,
Yes.
Councilor Foster,
Yes.
Councilor Gore,
Yes.
and Councilor Jarrett.
Yes.
Okay, councilors, we are adjourned and we'll see you on the 14th and maybe at some committee meetings in between. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.